radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid every Saturday, noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM. Streaming live on WRMN1410.com. And you could follow us on the YouTube live channel and WRMN 1410 AM's YouTube channel. You can pick up all of our previous shows. They've been edited and posted on Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. So the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel is there. And there's links to that on cgr.psylink.net. You get to that. And you can call us in here at, I keep forgetting
847-931-1410.
Thanks, Dean.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
All right, so Paul, I know we're going to talk about it, and I think it should be like a high school requirement for graduation, for everyone, like civics used to be, taking the Constitution test. But I got one question for you. Where do generals keep their armies?
I know.
Oh, no sound from Paul.
How come? Say it again, Paul.
Close.
Yeah, where they keep them, Paul?
Close?
No. In their sleeveys.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's one of that's like the chicken crossed the road joke. That's so old, man. So all right,
Mike? Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Did I ever tell you that my parents were in the iron and steel business?
I used to use that one.
Yeah, that's a good.
Your wife would stay home and iron, and your father would go out and steal.
My iron and my father stole.
Yeah. So organization.
Speaking of admirals, Mike, where do you take a sick ship?
Where?
To the dock.
Dad, I should have caught that one. That's a good one, But so all right. So where do you want to start? Small or big?
Let's go for the whole enchilada.
All right. So a 6-star general, and people didn't. It's actually out there in the system, ready to be used, but it hasn't been used yet. So it's the general of the Army's armies. Lots of armies there. So that's like the highest rank in our military. And they probably could have used that rank in World War II, but they didn't need to. It's like when they, and the reason being because there were so many forces. So when you talk about all the armies, there's all the armies, and there's army groups, which is a little bit of armies. People think of the Army, but the organization, well, I'll start small, right? I'll start at the basic. First thing you got is your soldier, and I'm going to talk about the Army now. I'll do some more research, and we could probably move it up to the other services. But you start out with your basic soldier. He is your infantryman, right? All the other soldiers, too, these basic guys standing there, your 18 to 20-year-old or what a basic soldier. Then you have a fire team. And a fire team is part of a squad, all right? So like a squad is led by a sergeant, usually a buck sergeant. In the Army, it's an E5, all right? And that is your basic maneuver element on the battlefield, is a squad. It's the first level where someone is called a leader. So you have a squad leader, all right? Now you have the 2 fire teams. Usually a squad will break up into 2 fire teams. So optionally, that way like one force can sit and fix the enemy. By fixing the enemy, I mean pin them down. While the other fire team, usually maybe 4 to 5 guys, goes out and flanks them and tries to take their position from a better angle, right? And that's usually led by the corporal, all right? A corporal. So that's an E4, right? So you have your basic private, E1, and then you have a corporal. And that's the first NCO in the Army. And they call it's a junior NCO, all right? A non-commissioned officer. Non-commissioned officers are the sergeants and petty officer, sergeants in the Army, petty officers and sergeants in the Army, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force, and petty officers in the Navy and the Coast Guard. And I don't know what they call them in the Space Force. I'm remiss on that right now. I probably should have researched that. All right, so you join the Army, you become a private. After a couple, maybe though, you've had some college, or you've been a Boy Scout, and you got an Eagle Scout, and you're quickly promoted up to Specialist E4. This is where the Army differentiates from all the other services. The E4 rank has an NCO, non-commissioned officer, corporal, and it has a specialist. The specialist is not a non-commissioned officer. He doesn't carry that authority. There is some authority to it. You know, you're expected to be in charge and maintain discipline. They call it, in the Army, it's a shield with a eagle on the front, the rank. So it's a small little shield with an embossed eagle on the front. And you're like, whoa, okay. We used to call that the sham shield, because you're not an NCO, but you're not a private. You've been around long enough that you're not the most junior guy there, so you get away with a lot of stuff just from your basic knowledge, right? And you can say, oh no, that, you know, I don't have to do that detail. It goes to the guy with the least seniority or the least rank. Right? But every other service, the E4 in the Marine Corps, corporal, they don't have a specialist. You're a corporal. There's nothing else. You're an NCO. The Air Force, it's a sergeant. The Navy, it's a petty officer. It's the lowest petty officer third class. That's the E4 rank, right? And same in the Coast Guard. So the Army differentiates that. So a lot of times you'll see specialists doing the jobs of corporals. And the only difference really is that you don't get promoted to corporal, you get promoted to specialist. And they call that, it's not really a promotion, it's an advancement. So you get advanced in the lower grades, from private first class, private E1, Skeeter, no rank at all. You know, it's nothing. You don't wear anything. And there's a funny story on that this kid was walking in the Pentagon, and he was right out of Fort Jackson as a personnel clerk. Real short school, 8 weeks, and then he went through 6 weeks, you know, typing and everything. And he gets assigned to the Pentagon, and he's not wearing any rank because he doesn't have any rank. And everyone was stopping him, asking him where his rank was, because no one realized that a rank that low actually existed. But I was that rank for a while, you know. Then you get Skeeter wings, which is your basic chevron. There's one chevron, which is an E2. So it's the second lowest pay grade. Then you get the private first class, which is a chevron and a rocker underneath, right? And that is equivalent to the Marine Corps rank of Lance Corporal. So even then, when they get to, you know, you get a corporal, and right below that corporal is a Lance Corporal. So they're even giving their E3s some leadership there, right? Over all the E2s and E1s. And so, all right. So by the time you make it up to corporal, okay, so I was going to say the difference is if you're a specialist, the E4, Spec 4 we used to call them, but because there's no more spec ranks. If you're a specialist, right, all it takes is a battalion commander level, so it could be a lieutenant colonel or a major in a battalion command position, only has to sign a memorandum, and you're laterally transferred to the rank of corporal, which means he's giving you the authority of a junior NCO. And by the time you make that, you should be in charge of some guys, you know? You should be in charge of some guys. After a while, you get promoted to sergeant, E5. Now, that's a squad leader position, all right? Some people say, no, staff sergeant is. Staff sergeant's an in-betweener. You could be a squad leader, you could be a platoon sergeant, all right? If you're in a real rank-heavy unit, you could be nothing, be a staff sergeant. Okay, so you got the sergeant and you're a squad leader. And you're in charge, you're like those 8 to 10 guys. And maybe you're 20, maybe you're 21 years old, right? And then you go up to platoon level, right? And the platoon sergeant rank is an E7 rank. Now, that's the first level, and we're talking about maneuver elements here. I'll talk about other types of elements, but that's the first level where you come in line with an officer, all right? So now you have your platoon leader. You have your platoon sergeant and platoon leader. So you're a sergeant now, but you're not really in charge. You don't have the command authority anymore. You have that lieutenant who carries the command authority. Back on the squad level, as an E5, you have the command authority. But you move up to that platoon level, which is generally 4 to 5, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even more squads to make this platoon. Now you put a bunch of these platoons together, right? So the first rank, first officer rank you're getting now in this is a platoon leader, all right? And it could be anywhere from a second lieutenant to a first lieutenant. Second lieutenant doesn't last very long in the Army. I mean, you get promoted almost pretty quick. Like within a year, you're going to be a first lieutenant. And you're going to be in that platoon leader position for maybe 1 or 2 years, taking care of this platoon. And you're being trained up by the sergeant first class who has at least 10 years in the service. I know they've back during the war on terrorism, when we had there was a real drop in enlistment, several years after 9/11, there's a real drop, and they had a shortage of mid-level guys. All of a sudden, guys were getting promoted way ahead of their normal time schedule. I seen guys that were 8 years in the service that have become master sergeants, which is an E8 position. And that's like, all right, so when you get up to that level, now you got the platoon sergeants, like 3 platoon sergeants, and then you get the first company grade level. So you have a company, which is made up about 3 platoons, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's sometimes they're task organized. The difference between the American Army and everyone else's Army is a lot of things are different in the American Army, where if you go to the Soviet Army, things are like dress right, we're dress right, dress. Everything was the same, right? So now the officer position there is going to be a lieutenant or a captain. We're talking now maneuver elements, all right? Other units, such as military intelligence units, psychological operations units, special forces units, might have, as a company commander, a major, all right? Now, all right, so you're at the company level there, and so you got three platoon leaders, right? So the company commander goes, you got 3 guys vying for his position. So where does the company commander goes off to battalion staff, then one of your lieutenants moves up, and maybe the lieutenants do their time, they go to battalion staff, or they go outside the company, take command of another company. But the leadership positions keep getting more narrow as you go up. So the next level, all right, so the senior enlisted guy is the first sergeant. He's generally been around 15 to 20 years. He's got a lot of experience, and he's taken this captain who could be as little as 3 years of experience, maybe 2 years as a platoon leader. You're a company staff, and all of a sudden, battalion staff, and then all of a sudden he's company commander with 3 years in charge of like 200 people. So you're going to have that enlisted guy down there advising you, right? Now you move up, right, to battalion, and that's where you get this lieutenant colonel, and these are the field grade officers. So every officer, captain and below, is called company grade. Then you go up higher and you have field grade officers. So a major and a lieutenant colonel, they're usually in charge of battalions. They're field grade officers. Then you have a senior field grade officer. That's the next level up, where you go up to a brigade, all right, or a regiment. But very few regiments exist operationally in the U.S. Army. But we went over to brigade system. So a colonel will be in charge of that brigade. And that brigade will have like 4,000 plus people in it. That's an 06. So they talk about flag officers, those are general officers. But when you hear him talk about a full colonel, right, he's in a category by himself called a senior field grade officer. Well, there's one other officer that's a senior field grade. That's a Chief Warrant Officer 5. So a colonel and Chief Warrant Officer 5 are still 2 senior field grade officers. Then you go up to the flag officers. And that's where you start, when you go to division, that's where you see a major general. And this always confused me because I'm kind of look at things. So, Paul, why does a lieutenant general outrank a major general when a major outranks a lieutenant?
Because in the old days, he was my chief lieutenant, meaning the guy I rely on.
Yep, that's exactly right. And a major being higher than a brigadier or 1-star, right? Because in the U.S. Army, right, in the old, we follow kind of like, we follow the British model for a while. So a brigadier would be a brigade commander, right? Brigadier. But that's a 1-star, right? And they may be in charge of the division for a while, but once they get in charge of that division, they're brought up to 2 stars. So division commanders are 2 stars. They have 2 ranks above their brigade commanders, which are just colonels. And then they'll have a deputy commander for operations and a deputy commander for support. And those are 1-star generals. There are some commands, but they're not maneuver commands, right, that are 1-star commands, 1-star general commands. Then you'll have the corps commanders, all right? So you take 2 of these divisions, 2 or 3 divisions, and you put them together for organization, all right? And that's called a corps. So one of the main corps we have is the 18th Airborne Corps. And it has the 101st and the 82nd Airborne divisions under it. And I think it's got the 11th Airborne Division also now. So you've got those 3 airborne divisions, and it's an airborne corps. And the commander of that corps is a 3-star general, a major general. All right. Then you have what they call a field army. All right, and this is where it comes up to the top. You got a field army. And of course, if you got a 3, and that's when you put a bunch of corps together. So you'll hear Patton with his 3rd Corps, and then 5th Corps, which 5th Corps was the first to cross the Rhine, all right, but Patton with the 3rd Corps. These corps, right, they fall under a field army. So it'll be an army commander up there, and that was Omar Bradley, was that army commander, the field army. So that's a 4-star command. So now what do you do when you have multiple 4-star commands? You know, do you just say you got a senior guy there? You know, he might be junior to them in the time in the academy or at the time he was promoted to general. And so now they created World War II, right? They created the 5-star position, all right? So all the field armies out there, all answer to this 5-star, which was in the European theater, we had Eisenhower. In the Pacific theater, we had 2 5-stars over there because you had MacArthur was in the south, and then you had Nimitz in the north. But the Navy had ground troops because they had the Marine Corps, very large Marine Corps. So you had the 5-star Admiral out there also. And then, of course, you had, above them all, right, you had General Marshall, George Marshall, right? And he was a 5-star. So they all answered to him, but they're all kind of the same rank, but Marshall had time and grade and everything else on them. Right? So now when you're expecting to field multiple Army groups, right? Let's say you got multiple Army groups in one area. If it's going to be a big European battle, multiple Army groups in one area, the battlefront might go down to Africa, Southwest Asia, all that stuff. Well, North Africa, who's going to be in charge of that? And was George Marshall, he should have been a 6-star because he had multiple 5-stars answering to him. Right? So that's where the 6-star, we've never used it, right? We've never used that rank, but it's there if needed. So again, if we had to go into a situation where we had multiple 5-star generals and admirals running around, then you'd have to have someone that could take the choke leech. And that would be the guy that's the joint, not the head of the joint, it could be head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. All right? And he could be really be a Coast Guard guy if you wanted to. Those are the joint things, and they don't answer the same roles. So to cap this off, Paul, you got your soldier, your fire team, your squad, your platoon, your company, your battalion, your brigade, your division, your corps, your army group. We got that all on the level?
Got it.
So this is like just a basic understanding of organization. So if you see these Hollywood movies and you're like, oh, wow, that guy's got 4 stars, so he must be in charge of an army, right? Or that guy's a corps commander, so he's going to be 3. Or that guy's an E5, so he's down at a squad leader. If they put him like an E5 in charge of a battalion, it's like things have really gone bad. Right? So then we have the rankings, all right? And then we have like the private, the private E1, E2, E3. Then you have the specialist / corporal, sergeant, staff sergeant, sergeant first class, also known as a platoon sergeant, fondly known as Marines as a gunny sergeant. Then you have your master sergeant in the Marines, master gunnery sergeant. Then you have your sergeant major, all right? And the one thing, and that's the enlisted ranks. And in every other army in the world, no one cares about those enlisted ranks. They mean nothing, except for like paychecks and stuff. What it really comes down to is their officers do everything. But in our army, and the strength of our army is that we know that we have a lot of smart guys that really don't want to be in command. But they're good guys and everything else, and they'll do the job. And when it comes to technical stuff, motivation, getting things done, we really lean on our first line supervisors, our directors, our NCOs, to teach these kids, take them under their wings, and everything else. A lieutenant coming out of ROTC or West Point really can't do that. So when we come back, more of this boring military civic stuff. This is Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM, streaming live on WRMN1410.com. Or you can follow us on the WRMN YouTube channel, WRMN 1410 AM on YouTube. You catch our archived shows on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. You call us in at 847-931-1410, or you can text us at 505-926-1410, or as always, you can make comments in the YouTube channel, live channel. Paul, I talked a lot just then, right? I know you're dying to get something in here.
Well, we've only had technically 9 5-star officers. And it's kind of interesting because we had George Marshall, MacArthur, Eisenhower, Henry Hap Arnold, Omar Bradley, and then we've had 4 admirals: William Leahy, Ernest King, Chester Nimitz, and William Bull Halsey. Now, what's the interesting thing about the 5-star Army guy?
The 5, he had the most 4 stars underneath him.
No, it's
because Marshall
Hap Arnold is the only 5-star in 2 services.
Okay.
because in 47 the Air Force split off.
Yeah, he was in the Air Force.
And so he's the only Air Force 5-star. And Marshall, MacArthur, Eisenhower, and Arnold were all appointed at the same time in December of 44. But Bradley is the last guy to be appointed, and he was in 50, and he was the last one to die because he died in 81. So since 1981, we've never had a 5-star officer.
Yes.
Now, there's a theory that we actually have 6 stars.
No, it's
And you know
actually
why that is?
it's not just a theory. It's there, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because 3 people were named generals of not of the Army, but of the Army. And one of them, while he was alive, that was purging because of World War I. But when they elevated him, they then decided they needed to elevate Washington in 1976, and they elevated Grant in 2024. So we've only had one living 6-star, and that was Pershing, and the other ones were promoted after they died.
Okay. Nice.
Which I find very interesting because it's fascinating when you think about it.
Well, here's something, right? If your rank was just corporal and you had nothing but privates underneath you, just had a bunch of privates, all right? And you took over an entire country and you're just happy with your corporal rank. So rather than make any other ranks in the Army in your services, you're the highest rank, right? Because you won, you're in charge and everything, and everyone else is a private of some sort. You could have 16 levels of private, but they're all below you, and corporal's the main thing. So when you're talking about people that were largely instrumental in the great victories of this country, especially Washington, Grant, Pershing during World War I, and you're like, wow, because those are the big names, right? Those are the big names. Right, went over there. And you say, okay, so to make them stand out against someone like, because Grant was only a lieutenant general. You know, he was in charge of the Army of the Potomac, right? The whole Army of the Potomac, Northern Potomac, the biggest standing army out there. And he was only a lieutenant general, a 3-star, right? There are guys out here that are 4-stars that didn't have the authority, they didn't have the manpower, they didn't have the responsibilities that Grant have that are 4-stars, right? They're not even combatant commanders, right? A lot of commands in the Army are non-combatant, 4-star commands are non-combatant commands. So they call it something else now, but Force Com, right? And TRADOC, ForceCom, it's something unified, something, whatever. But ForceCom and TRADOC were major commands in the U.S. Army, neither of which were combatant that had 4-star generals in charge of them. So how can you put this non-combatant commander, 4 stars, right? And Futures Command. Futures Command. Dude's a 4-star, right? Dude's a 4-star general. Major Command, Future Command, right? Futures Command. He's a 4-star, non-combatant commander, but he would outrank Grant, right?
Right.
So this is what honor, you're giving an honor to a guy that's already passed, right? Better to give them designers when they're alive and they can kind of enjoy it. But you're giving them in the past, but you're saying that, listen, dude, you're not in a more important position than General Grant or General Washington was, simply because you outranked them, because you don't outrank them anymore. They were 6 stars. You're a 4. You know? I could see the logic in that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and this goes some more history here. You know, Paul, what I was thinking earlier, I'm like, we don't have the civics classes, and we don't have, I mean, you could take history classes, or you could do junior ROTC if you're at a school that has junior ROTC in high school and everything, and you could learn a little bit about the military, right? But there's no set mandatory Department of Education mandate that anyone has to learn anything about that. Right? But I think it would be great, because in the current, the previous climates, it's getting a little warmer for us, but, you know, they wouldn't even let the Legion into the high school to ask if anyone wanted to go to boys or girls state. I'm like, we're not recruiting people to be in the military. We're offering them the best civics class ever taught. On our dime. We're paying for it, right? These kids would, you know, go down, and it's like a summer camp paid for a week, you know? The Department of Education should mandate.
You know, we talked about this leading up to the 250th anniversary. You know, like since 1973 to 76, they had the bicentennial minute and everything. And I remember my workbook, because in 8th grade you had to take the Constitution test and everything.
Yep.
And you know, that was so meaningful, and it brought so much to life and to light. And we don't have that anymore. A friend of mine had me look at his kids' class about what they're doing for, you know, the Constitution stuff now, and it's like woke stuff. You know, it's like they gotta incorporate woke sidebars into everything. You know, I mean, it's kind of sad when you think about it that we co-opted history, and we teach only certain things. You know, and it's terrible. You know?
Yeah, well, it's called revisionist history. But,
right.
All right, so one of the things, all right, so we have service academies. That's not the only way to become an officer in the military. You know, there's battlefield promotions, you know. But the most famous military academy, West Point, right? Second most famous, Annapolis, right? Then you got the Air Force Academy that everyone's heard of, right? It's up in Colorado. It's a great place, you know. One of my friend's grandson's going there. He's having a good old time, you know. And then you got, he's having a good old time because he's a hardworking kid and he doesn't mind it, right? You know. Then you have the Coast Guard Academy, right? And then there's one more service academy out there that's paid for by the U.S. government, and actually can get you a commission in any of the services.
My cousin went there.
The Merchant Marine Academy?
That is correct.
All right. So I didn't know about that stuff. I mean, you hear about how intense the competition is, right? To get into Annapolis or West Point. That's some intense competition, even to get into the Air Force Academy, right? That's intense competition. How many people have heard of the Coast Guard Academy?
Very few.
Yeah. Or the Merchant Marine Academy. I guess you would have to have been raised, your father would have to have been in the Merchant Marine, right? Been working in shipping and everything else to know anything about this, right? But that's kind of limiting. That's like a guild now, right? It's like a union, you know. You're keeping this information kind of secret. You're not advertising this stuff. The government, I know, isn't advertising it. Come apply with us, you know, to probably get enough applicants. But I would have applied for the Merchant Marine Academy, or the Coast Guard Academy. I was one of those guys who's like, yeah, I'll never get into West Point. I'll never get into Annapolis or anything. So why even bother? You know, it seems like a drag. I'm kind of lazy and everything. But you go there, right, and it's civilian, but you take on a military reserve obligation going through that academy because it's paid for by the U.S. government. And then you could say, well, you know what? I want to take a commission in the Army. And the Army goes, okay, well, what are your qualifications? Oh, Merchant Marine Academy. Okay, that's a service academy. Boom. You know, raise your right hand, you know, and boom, you're sworn in as a lieutenant. Or the Navy, which would be good too. You go active duty Navy. You don't have to go reserve. Go active duty Army. Go all that stuff. I even Googled, can I be, if I was in the Army Reserve and I wanted to go to the Merchant Marine Academy. Again, it's a civilian academy. It's a civilian school, right? But I'm in the Army Reserve. Well, they say, yeah, sure, we'll take you. But we're going to get transferred into the Naval Reserve. Logical, right? It makes
right.
Total sense to me, total logic on that. This information isn't getting out to these kids. You know, I don't even think it's getting out to our veterans groups. You know, I think one of the.
Do you want to know something? You know, a lot of this stuff. Do you know what the best medical school is?
Oh yeah, the Navy Medical School at John.
It's the joint. It's now a joint military medical school.
Yeah. Guess what? Guess what? If you get accepted into that school,
yeah.
Guess how many student loans you have to take to go there?
None.
Guess what else, Paul? You think you need a side job? You need a side job to get some pocket money?
Yeah.
No, they're paying you as a lieutenant. You're getting paid as an officer in the military to go to medical school. All right. The only trouble is, after medical school, they want service out of you. You go through the medical school, they're going to say, we're going to make you a doctor, which they're short of in all the services. You're going to go and you're going to be a doctor at a military post or on an aircraft carrier, which is like a military post all by itself, right? And you'll last like 6 years. So let me see. While I'm there, as soon as I finish my medical boards, right? I go, and in the military, you don't even have to pass your medical boards to be a doctor in the military. You just don't get paid the professional pay. You're still a doctor. You don't get paid the professional pay until you pass your medical boards. Once you pass your medical boards, right, you have 0 student loans that you're paying back. 0. Now you're up to the rank of captain, 03, company grade officer, on the level of your peers had they just went into the military after college, right? You're on the level of the peers, but you are getting professional pay. And the whole time you were going through the school, it's considered time in service. So now you're up to captain, you're getting this professional pay. Maybe you become a paratrooper. You get the paratrooper pay. You deploy over. You get the tax-free. You get the combat pay and everything. All right, and then you do your 6 years and you get out. Maybe you get into. Well, they're going to call you back whenever they need you, but you could stay in the reserves for those benefits. It is the greatest opportunity for if you want to be a doctor. The military is your greatest opportunity. Period. To do it, you'll have more money than all your peers that went through medical school. You'll come out after your 6 years of service, all right? You'll have no debt. You'll have the triple platinum plus black card, all right? You'll have the hottest ride possible, all right? Where you didn't even put in on payments, you just bought it cash. Your credit will be through the roof. All right? And your other guys will be sitting there saying, yeah, Department of Education is coming after me for those student loans. And I took this grant from the government and they wanted me to work they wanted me to work in a backwoods county that was underserved, right? But I didn't want to do that because I wanted to live in the city and party. And now the IRS is seizing all my tax returns to pay back all those grants. And I got this huge payment for malpractice insurance. You're like, and the guy go, and they're all going to say, well, I wish I had joined. I wish I had joined. I wish I had known about that. You're a doctor. You're supposed to be smart. The smartest one in my family is my sister Rosie. Absolutely. Not because she has the IQ points or anything, but she's able to use her brains for stuff. So when she was going to college, she said, hey, what's going to be the big money maker in the future? Not what you want to do, art school or whatever, not what you like, whatever. She wanted to know what was going to be the money maker in the future. She could have studied anything. She picked that. She picked the future money maker. It's worked out for her, you know? That's why I say she's the smartest, because she looked ahead. She saw ahead. She looked ahead into the future. I was just like, duh. But here's the thing, you know, if you're working in a public high school in Chicago, Paul, all right, as a counselor, what are the chances you were in the Marine Corps?
Not many.
Or in the Army. I mean, there's high schools there that are strictly ROTC schools. All right, the Rickenbacker Academy, the Rickenbacker Academy, right? It's a Chicago public school, but you're in a junior ROTC program, and if you don't like that, they go to a different school, right? That's part of the thing. So they might get some interest in that, or people might already be interested in it. But I had a conversation, again, with a kid who he's already been in the military for a while. And I'm talking to him, and he wants to be a firefighter, right? Cool. But he's in the Army, right? As a firefighter. That's cool, too. That's an engineer thing, right? But, all right, so I think, so he's in the Army as a firefighter. He went National Guard to reserves, but that's an engineer thing. I'm like, man, if you really want to be a firefighter, why don't you do an on active duty with the Air Force or something? Apply it with the Navy. If you really want to be a firefighter, go to another service that's going to, because the reserves, it's hard to get that. It's hard to get into training. Once you've been trained, is one thing. So he's an infantry guy, right? So he has a field, right? So to get that training, the money comes from a different pot, right? But had someone sat down and talked to him, you know, when he joined the National Guard initially, right? And said, listen, kid, what do you really want to do in life? I mean, what is your dream? He said once he wanted to be a police officer, but he didn't want to go to MP school because he always heard police officers talk about how MPs are just faking police and everything. I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, that's just a little bit of sour grapes there. That's like a guy from Chicago putting down a guy from Rockford because he's only the Rockford police and I'm the Chicago police. Dude, there's some rough neighborhoods in Rockford, right? It's how you do the job and everything. People that belittle that stuff, don't listen. No one should listen to them. But if you got a kid, a grandkid, it's interested in the military, right? Sit down and do some research with them. What do you want to do, kid? I mean, what would you really be happy doing? Because like you said, medical school, the military's got it, right? Oh, you want to fly fixed-wing aircraft? Oh, well, you got to go through the Air Force Academy to do that. No, you don't. The Army will teach you. You got a high school diploma? You got 20/20 vision? Can you do 10 push-ups? Because after 8 weeks of basic, I guarantee you do 50. Right? So, yeah, you could be a fixed-wing pilot in the Army, in the Marine Corps, right? You don't have to be a jet pilot. You could be a turboprop pilot who Hey, Paul, are there more civilian jobs for supersonic single engine jet pilots or multi-engine turboprop pilots?
Multi-engine turboprop pilots.
Come on. But all these jobs are there. The things the Army has, there are some jobs that the Army will not initially train you for. That's the band. You have to actually, if you're into music, right? You have to actually audition. So anyone that's really into music and a musician, right? They've probably gone to piano lessons. They've been in high school band for 4 years and everything. They've got a good knowledge of music and everything else. And now they want to be in a more organized structure, right? So they apply for the Army band. Now the Army band is like being in a what do you call it? The
big orchestra.
Yeah, one of the New York Philharmonic or whatever. So you're getting on that level. So that's even getting, but you got to be on that level, right? You got to have that training first. And then you audition and you get it and good. Boom. There you are. You're getting that. But there's anything there. You just got to look for it. Now, the Coast Guard's a little weird, right, on this. The Coast Guard will only send you to training if they need you to do that job, if they're short of that job. So the big one was cook. The Coast Guard needed cooks because you go out on these floats for a long time on an icebreaker or on one of these frigates, seagoing frigates, right? And you need a cook on board to cook for people. And it's a rough job. So a lot of people don't like it because it doesn't sound too glamorous or glorious. But you get in, they will send you to the cook school, and you will learn a lot. You'll be able to run an entire cafeteria, all right, on your own. No problem. All right. So we'll come back for the second half of the Chief Guard of the Republic here on WRMN 1410 AM. Comrades, Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM, streaming on WRMN1410.com, or you can watch us on the YouTube channel, WRMN 1410 AM's YouTube channel, or you can watch our past shows on Chief Guard of the Republic's YouTube channel, or you could hit us up. You could hit us up live in the YouTube comments on the live thing, or you can call us in at 847-931-1410 or text us at 505-926-1410. I think a lot of people are watching the football game. It's preseason. All right.
Hey, Mike, can I add something or say something?
Yes, please.
We're talking about the medical school, and we're talking about the military. I want to tell you a little story, and it's really fascinating to me, and it's because it actually happened. So, my father was in the Navy in World War II, okay? And then he got out, and he went to California. He wanted to get in the police department in California. And they were only taking ex-Marine type guys. And my dad was in the Navy. He was 5'9". He was like 145. So he worked at Lockheed, which was in the suburb of California. And then he did some construction. He came back to Chicago, and he did some construction. But he also worked at the Ford Motor Company plant at Ford City. And it had two functions. It built engines for the B-29, and it built an experimental jet engine. Okay. And my father was working at Ford Motor Company over here, and it was in the early 50s. I want to say 50, no later than 52. Okay. And he got his fingers caught in a machine, and he cut off his middle two fingers. Now, my father, he was a policeman.
Yes.
And he got his fingers cut off. And they went through the bone, and they were just basically hanging by skin. So they rushed him to Little Company of Mary. All right, and this is 52, and the doctor there had just done a rotation in Korea, and he said, you know, this might not work, but I'm going to try to reattach your fingers. And my father said, anything you can do, Doc. And they reattached his fingers, and he had a noticeable change in his fingers. They were very narrow where they were reattached. But he had movement of them, but not full feeling until years later when he shook a guy's hand. Okay. But had that doctor not had the military experience, my father would have been disabled and never been a policeman. And it's because he got training in the military. And military doctors are some of the best out there. And that's an important thing for people that they should think about. Because, like, if you are inclined to be a medical professional, you know, you do put yourself at some risk, but you also put yourself at the ability to provide a great reward to people when you might not ever think. Because how would a guy, you know, 8,000 miles from the war zone, a year or two out of it, realize that, you know, he's got a guy that's got a machining accident and is able to transform his life?
Yep.
So that's an important thing for people to think about and not overlook. And, you know, people that bash the military and, you know, say that they're, you know, stupid or they're cannon fodder, stuff like that, they matter in people's lives, even when they're not in the military. And some of them are ambulance drivers, some of them are police, some of them are construction engineers, some of them, you know, are just normal people. But, you know, people need to remember that.
You know, that's what I'm saying, right? You get what you want out of it. I know guys that, you know, they train for one thing and they end up doing something else, you know, the whole time. And they barely use their training because they're always doing something else. But they're doing military stuff. What was the, it's like the end of the movie Rambo, all right? When he's going on that rant, right? When he's saying, I used to be in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment. And now I can't even hold down a job at the car wash. Right? And that's, you know, a lot of that. Unfortunately, in my experience, and I want to be truthful out there, like, and I hate giving the fear out, but after a while, you know, you fill out a job application and they ask you if you have any military, right? And I told everyone, leave that blank. They can't ask you that question. Leave it blank. Don't tell them. Because if you put in the Army Reserve, guess where your job application goes?
In the garbage.
In the garbage. All right? The state of Illinois was throwing them in the garbage. All right? They're like, oh, we have to give you a weekend off a month and 2 weeks in the summer, and that's not fair to the other workers who can't get a summer vacation. Because for 2 weeks, you're out there at Fort McCoy in 150-degree temperature, being eaten by mosquitoes, dying of sunstroke and everything else. And I go in there, and this is like the third interview. I don't know what, you know, and they're like, the guy goes, you know, we can't hire you because you're in the Army Reserve. He says this to me out loud, right? And I look at him, and I says, well, thank you for the job. When do I start? He says, what do you mean? I says, you just violated federal law. So he says, oh, I got to talk to our lawyers. So I'm like, okay. I says, well, you know, talk to him before tomorrow because I'm going to call a lawyer and sue the hell out of you. Right? I'll spend the money on this one because I know that the minimum is $1 million. Soldiers and Sailors Act. It's $1 million, dude. Right? So he calls me back that night. But guess what I got in the mail when I came home?
The Chicago police one?
Chicago police letter. So he calls me back and he's like, well, you're right. Our lawyers say we have to hire you. And that told me one thing. They had no one in the Guard or Reserves working in their company of all their security. No one. So when the civil suit went in and we, subpoenaed their records and they have to show all their, guys that they refused, and they're going to have to prove that these guys were not better qualified than the guys that they hired, which in the security world, what are the chances, Paul?
The guys they didn't hire were probably more qualified.
Way more qualified, yeah. And the other excuse was, well, you just get a better job and leave. I says, yeah, but I'll give you the first offer to give me a better pay. Isn't that the way the free market works?
Yep.
Yeah, they don't. All right. So it's sad. This was back in the late 80s, all right, early 90s. All right. So it was right before Desert Storm, right? It was a low point low point in the military, right? We had Grenada, right? Desert Storm, Panama hadn't happened yet. Grenada was a blip. It was a little blip. And nothing else good since, Vietnam, 1972, all this time, nothing, a little bit of Grenada, that was it. So it was really a low time for the military. And it's that, what do you call it? You got the brick on you now. You join the military and suddenly you got the brick on you. So I'd say, hey, unless it's very specifically says that we're giving military hiring preference, right? We specifically want military, right? Don't even put it down on your resume. You could put down that you worked somewhere, say, oh, I worked in North Carolina. I worked in Fayetteville, North Carolina as a first line supervisor for 40 people. That's a lot. They're not going to put two and two together. They're not even getting it. I think they only scan these resumes or job applications, and they see military there and out it goes. So if you leave it off, they might give you an interview. And then when you get hired and they say, well, why didn't you tell us this before? Well, why would it have mattered? Go ahead, fire me because of it. We'll see you in court. But yeah, you got to take everything, litigate, because thank you for it's all right. So if you got a kid out there, all right, okay. So one of the things I'm going to say about our Legion post in particular, down in Schiller Park, post 104, 4501 25th, first Monday of the month, 6 p.m. We have meetings. Everyone's welcome if you're polite. So we'll let you in. We'll talk to you. As soon as you're not polite or you get political in our meetings, then we're going to have to ask you to leave. All right, we don't want confrontation like that. But one of the best things is, like, twice a year we go into the schools and we talk to the 3rd and 4th graders about the military and our military experience. And we tell them about the military services. And the one thing you cannot pay for in this life ever, right, is the look you get from these kids. You're rock stars. Well, you're heroes. You're their action figure heroes and everything in real life. The questions they ask you, how they're intensely interested. No one is staring off or daydreaming. And that's cool, 3rd and 4th grade level. They might remember that for a while. But the thing is, these kids get started off right in life, should research what the military has to offer and ignore what all these crackpots say about it. Sure, I've had some very bad experiences in the military. There are some very bad times. I retired twice. You know why I came back, Paul? From both times I retired? Because I got really drunk, forgot all the bad times, remembered all the good times, and went running back. There's good times. I got a lot of good training and met some good people and everything. It's what you make out of it. And literally, look at the jobs that are available out there. There's hundreds of them. Yeah, you want to be an MP dog handler? Boom, there you go. You want to be an electrician? Boom, there's the engineers. All right. You want to be a paralegal for the military? Boom, there's the paralegal school. You want to be infantry? Fine. Infantry's got a lot of skills. Man, self-sufficient, looking out for your buddies on the left and right, keeping alert, spotting danger, right? Doing what you're told when you're supposed to do it, getting it done, ignoring all the other stuff because you're focused on the mission. You know, it's infantry, the combat arms have a lot to offer on that to straighten your brain out and stuff. But there's, you know, how much does it cost to go to skydiving school?
A lot.
The Army will pay you to do it, even if you're old and fat. It's like the repel out of a helicopter. Some of this stuff, you know, that these, you know, the Hollywood actors have their stunt doubles do for them. The Army's paying you to do. All right, you're having, you know, the Navy's got. If it's not in the Army, it's in the Navy. If it's not in the Navy, it's in the Air Force. If it's not in the Air Force, it's in Space Force. If it's not in Space Force, it's in the Coast Guard. And maybe you find something in the Marines, right? But they're there. There's benefits. Education is one of them. You could do 3 years in the military, come out and have your GI Bill, which will basically pay for you to go to college and get a 4-year degree. So you do 3 years of indentured service. Paul, are they not paying you during these 3 years?
No, they're paying you.
They're paying you. They're feeding you. Everything else. They're teaching skill sets, right? That you might use towards your college degree. Right? Then you come out, you use your GI Bill, you go to college, and what sort of student loans did you take out? None. Depending on the college you went to, right? You go to some highfalutin university and get some highfalutin degree. It might be more expensive. But kids aren't aware that this stuff's available. They go into a recruiter, and a recruiter has a list, all right? We need this MOS. We need a lot of them. No one wants to do it anymore. But we need them. So they're like, okay, so one of the big things, right? You're a transportation unit, you're a truck driver, right? That was pretty cool, right? Because you're in a transportation unit, and you're supposed to be behind the lines. You're moving the supplies up to the front, but you're not actually getting to the front, right? Because they come back and they get it and they go up there, right? And you're thinking, oh, this is pretty cool. It's pretty safe. I'm learning how to drive a truck, learning about logistics. And then Desert Storm hits, right? Then we got Iraq in 2003. And then we got Afghanistan. And one of the most dangerous jobs out there was truck driver. Because you're in a truck that has no armor on it, and you're a target. So all of a sudden, they don't have enough truck drivers because people are going, hey, I don't want to be a target. You know, you're safer in the infantry. So now they have to say, oh, well, you know, the guy comes in, he's got an IQ of 199, and you know he's built like he's built like a Olympic athlete, a decathlon athlete. And you look at him and you go, man, this guy may probably make good ranger, special forces, or anything, but no, it says truck driver. Put him in truck driver. So you have to go well educated, and never sign a contract until you get what you want. There's some stuff that's ridiculous. They're not going to make you a general or anything like that. But there's things. I want this school. I want to go to this school. Well, that's not available right now. Well, here's my number. Call me back when it is. I'll wait. He makes a couple calls around and, oh, it's suddenly available. But, yeah. But they won't let the recruiters in the schools. The career counselors are obviously messed up because they're not sending people into fields where they can make money. Right? Oh, you want to go into political science? Okay. Good luck with that. Okay, you got your degree. Now what do I do? Subway's hiring. Well, I want to be a civil engineer. Oh, geez, you're going to have to study for that one, right? And you go to college, and the guy says you become a civil engineer. Look, you got a job, right? But let's say you don't even have to go to college. College isn't for everyone. Like I said, you go in the military or you go into a trade, right? Become a mechanic, become an electrician, become a plumber. I know the unions are kind of messed up with these trades and stuff, right? Where, it's kind of hard. You get the training and everything, but who's going to hire you? Who's going to apprentice you for all this stuff? So when they say the trades, they have to realize that sometimes the trades are their own worst enemies. Because they say 5 guys.
HVAC guys,
What?
Mike?
HVAC. HVAC is good. So back in the day, HVAC, I had to call for an HVAC guy. It was because it was cold and my furnace wasn't kicking on and I couldn't figure it out, right? So I had to call. He came over and I'm watching him, not because I think he's going to steal anything, but I want to see what he's doing so I know how to do it next time myself, right? What's usually one thing goes wrong and it keeps going wrong. So you learn how to fix that one thing and you're pretty good, right? So I'm watching him and I make a conversation with him. He goes, Tubman, that's not a very common name. He says, was your dad a police officer on the southeast side? I go, well, yeah, he was a detective. He goes, he put me in prison for burglary. And that's where I learned this trade. And he showed me what to do. He fixed it, and he says, I could have. He says, I could have replaced the whole part and everything, and charged you for that, and charged you for the time. But I'm only going to charge you for like the inspection. Obviously, my dad treated the guy right, and when he was in prison, he learned the HVAC trade. Paul, he learned HVAC in prison. Where would you rather learn HVAC? In the Army,
in the military,
getting paid, being able to drink on the weekends, right? Being able to date girls, outside, being able to walk off the post, on the post, off the post, on the post, right? Driving your own car, right? Or in prison. I think the military's the best bet on that. You can't get into the trade school? Military will teach it to you. Military's 100% non-union. You know why, Paul?
Because you're all working for the same.
Well, it's against the law to unionize the military. It's like, it's a big violation. I forget what the law is, but that's why we're not union. We have some representative companies like the United States, United States, I even forget. I forget, I never joined them. Or did I join? I joined them for a while and then I dropped out. But they have these organizations, much like veterans organizations, but like the FOP, FOP's a little different than these, but you join this and then they got the bigwigs, the lobbyists, right? So you join in a group and they pay for lobbyists to look out for your best interests, all right? Because you're not going to go on strike. There's not going to be any work action or everything. Those were the guys that, when they were making, the Warrant Officer Association was one of them. So the Warrant Officer Association was doing some lobbying, and they had to do like some drug deals because they said, listen, we're doing work on par with officers. So like a Warrant Officer 1 was like second lieutenant, 2 first lieutenant, 3 was it's a W1 was like a first or second lieutenant, a 2 was like a captain, a 3 was like a major, a 4 was like a lieutenant colonel, and a 5 was like a colonel. And they're like, so we had pay slightly, so I made slightly less than a colonel.
One was the second lieutenant, 2 first lieutenant, 3.
Sorry.
And get some, because there's a delay. There's a delay on that.
Like captain, 3 was like a major, 4 was like a lieutenant colonel,
Right.
and a 5 was like a colonel.
All right, going to break. Six Bayonets, comrades, we're back here for the second half of the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday noon until 2. WRMN 1410 AM. If you stayed with us this long, you've heard this enough, right? But you can find the YouTube channel by just going to WRMN1410.com. Go ahead, listen live, watch live on YouTube. Pretty good. Our call-in number is 847-931-1410. Or you can text us in 505-926-1410. So I was just thinking about this again. I think it's very important to get people to join the military, even if they're not going to stay in. I'm not a fan of universal conscription because when you have conscription, a draft, all right, you're going to get exactly the same people that would have joined. Almost exactly. Everyone else is going to have an excuse or something, all right? Going to be sick or they're going to be not in physical health enough to join, right? If you go to draft, they're really going to look for reasons not to draft you. If you go to join, they're really going to look for reasons to let you join. Like we had one kid in my daughter's wrestling crew, right? The Ultimate Combat Gauntlet, all right? This little kid, Killer Prince. He's like 17 years old. He's getting ready to be a senior. And he's a wrestler, and he's in pretty good shape, you know? He's like a tumbler. He's out there. He's doing everything. He can't join the military because he's got type 2 diabetes. All right? I felt sad because this kid was he wanted to. He wanted to be a medic, right? And I had his whole career path charted out. I'm like, okay, here's what you do. Now you go to medic, you go to be the field medic, and as soon as you're done with that, right, you go back to school and you study like nursing, and you get your RN degree, and they're going to pin you as an officer, but you apply to get to med school, and they'll pay for you to go to med school, like you're saying over there at the military med, and you're going to be an officer, and then bam, you'll be a doctor. Why be a medic or a nurse when you could actually be a doctor and you can have this step-by-step planned out? You know, this is a plan of attack. You know, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. Bam, you're done. And it's all paid for. It's all gratis, right? You want to serve, you serve. The other thing is 14 million military-age men invaded our country. At least. That's a very what do you call it? Conservative estimate.
A large number.
All right. Now, some of them may have had military training in their home countries through conscription. All right. Some of them maybe have had military training via the cartels. They're in the country now. They owe no loyalty to this country. Zero. How are we going to combat them? If everything if all these 14 million suddenly came out themselves and had operations as insurgent groups, how do you protect yourself? Well, you protect yourself by having the military training to protect yourself, to protect your family, to look out for this stuff. And how do you get the military training, Paul?
By going to the military.
Yeah, or you could join a militia group. They're probably not going to give you the same training, though. Right? The military's been doing this for over 250 years now. It was the 251st birthday of the Army this year on June 14th, right? 251 years we've been training in the Army. We know how to do it. And speaking about that, when I said about the cartels and everything, and even the militias, during the 80s and even the 90s, we had a problem in the reserves and the National Guard with guys that were joining and not showing up. Now, back in the late 70s and early 80s, if you didn't show up for a couple of drills, we call them drills, or you know, your weekends. If you didn't show up for your weekends, then they sent the MPs out to your house, and they brought you in, and they processed you into active duty, and you're on 2-year contract. And if you go AWOL from that, that's a felony. All right, and then you had to do 2 years on active duty somewhere to make up for your 6-year reserve or National Guard commitment. So that's one of the ways they made sure you showed up all the time. right? So what they were doing is they were recruiting kids in the neighborhood that didn't have criminal records yet, all right? Because the military can look at your juvenile records. All right, so if you think just because you turned 18, everything else disappeared, it doesn't for the military. And they were sending them to basic training and sometimes even to their advanced individual training. So let's say they joined as infantry, which in the reserves, really you're not going to join as infantry because there's only 2 infantry units in the reserves. One's in Hawaii and one's up at, it's where they keep all the drill sergeants. It's like a battalion of reserve drill sergeants that fill in for the guys down there. But the National Guard has a lot of it. So they send you off to get all this military training, leadership training, you know, all this stuff. And then you come back and you're in the gang now, but you're never showing up for these military, for your weekends anymore. You're just gone until you get a letter in the mail saying you've been kicked out and you could care less. Right? So they were doing that, and now you have to almost look even closer at these guys. I don't know what the current state of the reserves is, but they really haven't, there isn't much they do to you. They can, if you don't show up for your drills, your weekends, they could go take the money back for your training. So what they do is they put a lien on your tax returns. It's just, until it's all paid up. So that tries to keep you coming to the meetings. They also have a great thing, you know, I'm trying to not be a recruiting video, but what's one thing we have to have, Paul, according to the law, that a certain Supreme Court justice says it's only a tax?
Oh, healthcare.
Healthcare. Guess what? Reserve, if you're in the Guard and the reserves, guess what your health care through TRICARE cost you?
$30 a month?
A little over $30. I think it was $32. Family, it's like $200 and something a month. I think that's a pretty good deal, huh?
Real good.
It's better than unless you're getting the free stuff, you know, the free Obamacare, the highly subsidized Obamacare. That's good. That's a good thing. And who's telling them about that?
Nobody.
Hey, and then you get that pay. You think you're not getting paid for the weekend? You're getting paid. 4 days of active duty pay. Maybe it's not worth your weekend off or anything, or you make more in your civilian job. That's my job. When I got activated, I was losing $500 a month being activated, but I still got activated, you know. But then if you stay into 20, you got a guaranteed pension at 60. You know, might not be a lot, but, you know, it adds up. Who knows if Social Security is going to be there? Plus, you're paying into Social Security.
You're paying into Social Security. That's a real big thing, too.
So you got your Medicare locked in. You know, now, back in the day, a lot of police officers didn't pay into Social Security or Medicare. They relied on their pension, right? And they relied on the city to have the medical care for them. And we all know what 9.5 did with that. He cut off a lot of the retirees from their medical health care.
That's true.
You know, where they were promised it. He could care less, right? He's going to save a nickel to give over to his buddies or whatever, and then mess over you. But these guys didn't pay into Medicare. So now they get older, they don't even have Medicare, which covers all the old people sicknesses, you know? The high stuff, you know, that lowers the rates because the hospitals boost the rates because they know they're going to get Medicare. So they're still going to bleed you like a vampire. They're going to suck the blood out of you because you got a couple bucks left, right? Before you're too old. But, hey, you do your 20 years, you got your 40 quarters, boom, you got paid into Social Security and Medicare. You do 20 years in, you're retired military, you get retired, you get retired, TRICARE retired. Right? It's all great, all right? Why are they pushing this information out of the schools and not letting recruiters or even veterans groups come in and talk to these kids about this stuff?
Because it's their agenda, Mike.
You're absolutely right. It's their agenda to weaken the country.
Right, and it's to make everything bad and vilify things.
They want
we're living in our own revisionist history, and like there's a theory, we're all living in a holodeck somewhere. Well, we're definitely living in our own revisionist history with the way these woke people are doing this.
Yeah, and here, all right, so everyone wants a socialist form of government, right? They want the government to tell you what to do. This is going to be your job. This is how much you could, or you're going to have private business. This is how much you could charge for milk, right? Well, they do that. Yeah, Nixon did that, right? Anyways, right. To save the dairy farmers. All right, so the government dictating what you can charge, the government dictating how much you get paid, the government dictating where you can live, how you can live, how much this, whatever, right? Meanwhile, they dictate that, they get paid more, they get a better house, they get better, Anyways, everyone thinks that's great because you don't have to think anymore, right? You're like, the government will take care of me. I'll just, bounce off the walls, I'm the Roomba, right? I'm the Roomba. The government just supplies the batteries. But the military, less so now than it was before, the military gives you the health care, gives you the food, gives you the pay, gives you the job, gives you a place to live. Perfectly socialism. Do what you're told. Okay? The trouble is, you could die, you could get hurt, right? Just do what you're told. They're so against that because the difference being is if you're in the military and you gold brick, they'll beat you. You will work. You will do your job. The military will make sure you do your job. You will have responsibilities. Your coworkers will see that they're carrying your slack and they'll correct you. Right? So all of a sudden you become a corrected person. And you're not only being self-sufficient, but you're taking care of the guy on your right and left because everyone depends on you. And you depend on them. And it's the socialist system, but it's enforced by the people, not by the government. It's the guys on the lower level that see that they're pulling your slack that are going to straighten you out, right? So that's like terrible to these guys because now you get out of the military and you become self-sufficient. You can look out for your guys and everything, but you've lived that life. You think I could do better than that, right? And you come out and you try to do better. Now they're going to put a foot on you and say, no, you're not allowed to do better. You're only allowed this much. The military scares them. It's scary. The more personal self-worth and value you have to your own work, the more you value the people on your right and left, all right, the less they control you. That's harder for them to deal with.
They're they're the ones that want to be the control. See,
then they should join the military and rise to the ranks.
Right. They don't want to share the control or let you become independent. Because once you become independent, you don't need them anymore. And you could see them for what they really are, is enablers of all kinds of things, like enablers of hopelessness, enablers of people that have to get socialism, people that are enabled and you depend on them and they figure once they depend on you, they'll stay in. But once you become independent, self-sufficient, self-thinking, self-motivated, they don't want you anymore.
Nope. Well, some people are independent, self-thinking, and self-motivated to be in charge of everyone else and to tell them your stuff. And they don't want, they want you to support them, right? And agree with them on every level, right? It's scary. I'm like not a lot of them join. There are people that are there's liberals and conservatives in the military, right? And I'm not saying, people think liberals bad word, but no, liberals good word in some cases, conservatives good word and bad word in some cases. It depends on the context, right? But if we were conservative Aztecs, Paul, we'd still be raising people from birth to be sacrificed to the sun god and eating their hearts.
We'd be playing soccer ball with their heads.
Yeah, that's conservative on that side. They're very conservative. Didn't want to change, But people...
there's a theory that sometimes you have to change to stay the same. Did you know that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, if you're a farmer and suddenly your land, global climate changes, right? And before you were growing oranges or something more tropical, right? And now it's a more temperate climate. In order to stay a farmer, you can't change the climate, so you have to change the crop.
Correct.
Right? So here, the climate is bad for the military. It's bad again. It's getting very bad, and not because the current regime that has. I'm getting into it again. So in the entire confrontation with Iran this year, not the past 47 years, all right? Because I will attribute 90% of the deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq directly to Iran. I will attribute that, right, directly to Iran and their nonsense, fighting a proxy war with us, right? But in the last couple months, we have had some losses. A few losses. Everything's a great loss. Every loss of life on our side is a great loss of life. They all deserve better. They all deserve to live long and full lives, right? But really, comparatively speaking, to the Afghanistan and Iraq not even close. Not even close, right? But the press will be out there making it look like everything's absolutely terrible, that this is a quagmire and a loss and everything else. And they're pushing this in people's faces, not in the faces, it's all, you just go to Google News and it's like, oh my God, again, right? Can we say something positive? Can we support the troops over there? Oh, everyone on what's the carrier out there? The USS Lincoln?
Yeah.
I guess they're having, someone must have Twittered on their account, right? To their mommy that things were bad and they felt sad, and maybe some guys jumped overboard or whatever. Okay, sometimes the military makes you nuts. Sometimes you were nuts when you joined. All right? But they're having problems. There's almost 5,000 people in confined space. It's a little bit bigger than what? Do we have any prisons that hold 5,000 people?
Cook County Jail.
It's not a prison. Anyways, all right. You have problems when you put 5,000 people in an enclosed environment for a certain amount of time. All right? You're going to have problems. Yeah, you need to rotate them out. You need to know about that. But if you pop every little problem on an aircraft carrier to look like we're losing in a war and put that out to the press and everything, they could care less. The press could care less when the 82nd Airborne added another brigade and put them up in condemned barracks because they were deploying right away and said, hey, we'll clean it up while you're gone. The guys that were left behind to do the fixing and everything, they didn't do anything. They came back, or they went to war with the Army Corps of Engineers, and there was just a big battle there, and nothing got done. No one wanted to bring it up to the higher-ups because they didn't want to look weak, right? And these kids came back, and they were in the same filthy, condemned environment until one kid's dad came out and filmed the stuff, and he forced it onto the press, and it went out on the press, and it got fixed, right? It finally got fixed, right? Because that's what happened. But the press wasn't there looking for these deplorable conditions. They love it when the military's living in deplorable conditions. They're like, hey, this is great.
FCC Coleman, 6,100 inmates. And that's in Coleman, Florida. FCC Beaumont in Texas,
But those Florida ones are,
5,800.
they're private.
This is federal. FCC Coleman.
Oh, they're not contracting with this
No.
place? Because a lot of the Florida ones are
A lot of
private
them
prisons.
are. A lot of them are. Yeah.
I want to open up a private prison.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. Imagine the problems they go through.
Sure.
You know? They're just, something like this is join the Navy. It's great, and everything. And then you hear that, you get assigned to an aircraft carrier and, it's just going to be all terrible and everything. And sometimes the plumbing doesn't work. Plumbing? You guys got plumbing?
How about the poor guys in the field, right?
I got stories, but they I told the story of the porta potties overflowing and everything, and this is in the United States, right? And we tried to get that fixed and everything, but you know what? It ended up getting fixed as soon as we brought it to the right people, and it wasn't the top ups.
I watch a YouTube channel, Ryan Macbeth, and he's an Army guy. He specializes though in tracking people down cyber and stuff like that. And he said in the Army, there's a big chance you could get hurt, but a lot of times it's hurry up and wait. And like you're waiting for this or waiting for that. But as he put it on an aircraft carrier, you're in a whole city that's active all day long, and you're always, planes are taking off and engines are being repaired, and they get a port of call maybe once every 30 to 45 days, but maybe not. And he goes, there's even in the Army though, you might be in action, but there's some downtime eventually. But when you're, forward deployed in a carrier, it's like all the time under the gun.
That's why they get CPAY.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was an interesting thing again about an aircraft carrier. An Army brigade is commanded by one colonel, 106. He's the senior guy. No one outranks him. There's no other colonels in that brigade. Just him. He's got about 4,500 people. Aircraft carrier, about 4,500 people. They have 4 captains, 06s, equivalent to a colonel. 4 of them on that ship. If it's not the flagship for the fleet commander, who's going to be an admiral? All right. See you next week.
Have a great week, everybody.
All right.
Hey, you were just listening to
Bye,
Chief
Dean.
Guard of the Republic. Good to talk
Bye,
to you.
Mike.
Good to see you, Paul. Chief Guard of the Republic, right here, WRMN 1410, each and every Saturday from 12 noon to 2 o'clock. We'll catch you again next week.
Pizza's here.
Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on